Welcome to another PFF college football preview show. Max Chadwick alongside Dalton Wassman here. Again, Dalton, we're doing 3 bowl games we're previewing. We're not previewing every bowl game, but we got 3 non-playoff bowl games between ranked teams that are really, really fun matchups. So we got to do all 3 of those games. And the last one we're talking about is number 15 South Carolina against number 20 Illinois in the Citrus Bowl. It's on New Year's Eve at 3 p.m. on ABC. Both these schools had really good seasons, honestly, right? You know, South Carolina, their defense was spectacular. Lenora Sellers really became a lot better down the stretch of the season. Illinois, top 20 team as well. Nobody saw that coming into the year as well. So 2 teams that obviously had really, really good years and are hoping to build for the future, especially South Carolina as well. I'm excited for the Citrus Bowl. I think it should be a lot of fun.
Absolutely. I think these are 2 teams that have outperformed expectations this year, right?
Yeah.
When you talk about, South Carolina was picked to be near the bottom of the SEC and then they got themselves at least into the playoff argument. And Illinois, look, I know 4 teams made the playoff out of the Big Ten, but Illinois was pretty clearly the next best team in the conference, and they were a lot better, especially the offensive line improvement, right? We talked about J.C. Davis in the offensive line, keep the clean pockets. Luke Altmaier got a lot better. We got a couple of good receivers. These 2 teams had really good years, and I think it sets themselves up for next year in conference contention. I'm curious to see where they go, both of them, especially South Carolina with such a deep SEC. And, with Illinois, I mean, Big 10, got 4 teams in the playoff. Correct. Getting into that group is going to be tough, but they were a lot closer to it, I think, this year than they thought they would be.
Absolutely. So you have the South Carolina offense against the Illinois defense. Obviously, a lot of South Carolina fans don't love you for Lenora Sellers' takes early on in the year, but he's gotten better, obviously, Dalton. So what should we be looking out for when he and the Gamecocks on the ball here?
Young guys, they can improve, right? I mean, come on, they can get better. It's just a thing of
I'm with him. You don't know ball.
We had hardly seen him last year. He played all of 20 snaps, and obviously he's physically talented. But I'll tell you what we do have to talk about is him as a runner. And the passing, we're getting better. We're getting there. I think South Carolina's done a nice job schematically of putting him in better situations and, screens and yards after catch I've talked about before. But we've got to talk about this guy's an elite runner of the football. Second this season in the Power 4 with 820 yards rushing, 6.2 yards per attempt, highest yards after contact per attempt, which makes sense because he's 6'3" and 240. He's maybe one of the hardest guys in college football to tackle right now. 44 missed tackles, 26 explosive runs, and it's just to see him become down the stretch one of the best playmakers, especially late in plays and as blitzers are coming on in college football. Really, really impressive, okay? And I think that's one of the things I want to focus on here too. Max, since week 8, he's the highest graded quarterback in the country when he's blitzed. So I think the idea here, even though Illinois' got such an aggressive defense, there's a lot of 5-man rush, there's a lot of man coverage on the back end. Boy, it might work in Sellers' favor, honestly.
Oh, yeah.
And in that stretch, think about it like this. Against the blitz since week 8, 91.8 passing grade, second in the country. 78 rushing grade, 5th in the country. You can bet he's the only quarterback in the top 5 of both. So I think there are some advantages here when it comes to him beating an aggressive Illinois defense. Now, Illinois, they haven't seen a ton of quarterback run this year, only 74 carries, but they give up 6.2 yards per carry, ironically the same number that Sellers gets. That's above a national average. When it scrambles, 7.5, and 20 missed tackles this year against quarterbacks at a 27% rate. The national average is just under 20. So you're talking about a matchup here against Lenora Sellers for a team that plays a lot of man coverage. That can be vulnerable to mobile quarterbacks. Blitzes a lot. Sellers been really good against the blitz. Sellers continues to do the things he's done. I think Illinois might want to think about changing things up, maybe playing back a little more zone, because as a runner, he's elite. As a passer, he's getting better, and certainly there's a lot of hype going into next year. I've heard all about it, but I think his feet would be the number one concern for me if I'm the Illini.
And especially how amazing he was on the ground in his last game that he played against Clemson, a team that made the college football playoff.
Just carried him. Yep.
When they won that game 17-14 over Clemson, again, a college football playoff team right now, Lenora Sellers had 18 forced missed tackles. That's the most by a quarterback in a game in the PFF college era, dating all the way back to 2014. So over the last decade of college football, 176 yards after contact for Lenora Sellers in that game, Dawn.
He's a beast. I think
12 yards after contact per attempt.
I think he's got very much right now, and he could maybe become more polished as a passer. I think he's got very much the same skill set as a Jalen Milroe from Alabama.
I agree. He is absolutely electric in his last game against Clemson, and obviously it's a great point by you. The amount of man coverage that Illinois plays. Obviously, those DBs, their backs are turned. And when your backs are turned to Lawrence Sellers, that's not a good thing to do because of how electric he is.
It's hard enough to tackle him when your backs aren't turned.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. All right, I got the Illinois offense in this game, and really it's the key matchup is can the Illinois offensive line hold up? Because Pat Bryant is opting out of this game. He is not playing in this game for Illinois. They need as much help as they can get in the passing game. And Illinois right now, 65.1 pass blocking grade. That's 94th in the country. They give up pressure on 37% of their passing snaps this year. It's 116th in the country. And Dolan, South Carolina, second best pass rushing grade in America with a 90.5 grade. A 39% pressure rate is 8th in America. Kyle Kennard did opt out of this game. That's big, right? Because he just won Defensive Player of the Year in college football. But you still are loaded on the defensive line with Dylan Stewart, Tonka Hemingway, TJ Sanders. It's still a loaded defensive line. This wasn't the Kyle Kennard show, and he was spectacular for them this year. But it's not just him. You still got a lot of other guys you got to worry about on this team. And Luke Altmaier is currently 82nd among FBS quarterbacks this year with a 47.4 passing grade under pressure. So even without Kyle Kennard, I still think this is a big mismatch for Illinois' offensive line. And the problem is now you lose probably your top receiver in Pat Bryant. You have an elite secondary in South Carolina as well. So it's just not a great matchup for the Illinois passing game in general. But if they want anything going on in the passing game, they need to at least protect Luke Altmaier and hope that he could find some weaknesses in the South Carolina secondary.
Yeah, and it's kind of the line of demarcation. I think, 96th in pass blocking grade. It's a bit tilted because there were a lot of times this year where they were really good. And why is it tilted? Because the three lowest graded games in pass protection for them came against Oregon, number 1, Penn State, number 6, and Michigan, who had maybe the best D-line in the country. You got Mason Graham going top 5, all that stuff. So those three teams are hard for anybody to block, right?
But also South Carolina is too, though.
This is your problem, that South Carolina you would put pretty squarely in that group as opposed to the other 9 opponents that they played, right? So in basically in their other 9 games outside of those 3, they were really good. Mm-hmm. The problem is are they up for this level of challenge? And we've seen them at this level of challenge 3 times. And they did beat Michigan because Michigan couldn't score. But it's certainly not because they could block Mason Graham. Because, no one can do that. And I think that interior pressure is the thing for me. We've talked about the improvement Illinois had at tackle, but the interior is still a bit shaky. I'd be looking at TJ Sanders and Tonka Hemingway on the inside, maybe even more so than Dylan Stewart. And it's obviously every game now going forward is going to be a showcase for Dylan Stewart. But I'm looking at those inside guys getting that interior pressure on Altmaier. If they can get it, it could be a long day for Illinois' offense. If not, Altmaier's been really good in a clean pocket all season, but it's going to be about keeping those clean pockets and protecting him.
Yeah, it's a good point by you in saying, hey, listen, it is tilted because they have played 3 elite defensive lines, but the problem is in this game you have another elite.
This is another one.
Yeah, another elite defensive line. It's not like you have like a good defensive line. No, this is a top 5 defensive line in the country. Even with Kyle Kennard opting out, they still have an elite defensive line.
But I think for guys even off the edge like J.C. Davis and Melvin Priestley, good showcase game maybe for the NFL, right? I think J.C. Davis declared for the draft, but as far as I know, he hasn't opted out of this game.
I don't think so.
Good showcase game for those 2 guys off the edge because even though you don't have Kennard, maybe you still have, say, a Brian Thomas Jr. coming off the edge. You're going to have Dylan Stewart on one side. Yeah. It's going to be a fun matchup to watch, but that's where I'd worry the most if I'm Illinois is that interior rush with Sanders and Hemingway.
So in this top 20 matchup in the Citrus Bowl, who wins between South Carolina and Illinois?
It's a tough draw for Illinois. Yeah. It's a tough draw. I mean, South Carolina won, arguably the hottest team in the country right now. And you mentioned that win over eventual ACC champ Clemson. The defense has been top 5 caliber all season. Now that they got the offense going with Sellers, you get Nick Harbor working some. Josh Simon's been really good at tight end. Rocket Sanders. I think South Carolina, as well as they've played lately, I think they're going to win this one. I think their defense is too big of a problem. I have the Gamecocks 31-13. Illinois had a fantastic season, but they got maybe as tough a draw outside of the playoff as anybody did. South Carolina's raging hot. They're well-rounded, and Sellers is playing better. I got the Gamecocks.
I hate this matchup for Illinois as well. I have it 27-17, a little bit closer than you, but you look at Illinois' offense, and the offensive line just not protecting that well against an elite defensive line. And then an elite secondary in South Carolina against an Illinois passing game that's missing their top receiver and Pat Bryant as well. And then also the fact they play so much man coverage on the other side, and Lawrence Sellers is so dangerous on the ground, maybe more so than any other quarterback in America. This is a bad matchup for the Fighting Illini, unfortunately for them. So I got South Carolina winning the Citrus Bowl as well, 27-17. I think South Carolina ends its season on a high with 2 straight top 20 wins over Clemson and over Illinois, and they're absolutely a team to watch.
Did I hear it was something? It's still something like Illinois' best seasons in like 15 years.
Probably.
I think it was like their first 9-win season in a long time.
It's been a while.
Really has been their best year in a while, and I think it establishes them, at least in that second year of the Big Ten. We'll see if they can break through the way that, say, an Indiana did this year eventually. They had a fantastic season. This is a tough draw. So I think anybody getting South Carolina would have been a tough draw in this bowl season. It just happens to be the Illini.
So they're actually, if they lose this game, they'll go 9-4. And their last time they won 9 games in a season was 2007 when they went 9-4 and lost in the Rose Bowl. So best seasons in 17 years for Illinois. Which would be,
either way, yeah, no, it's been Brett Bielema's doing a great job there with that program.
And if they win the game, they'll win 10 games for the first time since 2001. So it really has been an incredible year for Illinois, right? I mean, they've really had a really great run. They went 5-7 last year. They've had losing seasons in most years, honestly, since 2007. And this is a great year for them. Win or lose this game, honestly.
Certainly not 2 teams that we thought preseason would be in the top 20 at the end of the regular season.
But, I mean, South Carolina winning this game, and Dawn, and how young that team is and how dynamic those young players are, they are a dangerous team next year. A dangerous, dangerous team next year.
Keep adding to the roster.
Exactly. Both have South Carolina beating Illinois in the Citrus Bowl. I want to thank both these fan bases as well for being so good to us throughout the whole season. I wanted to do one last preview for you guys before we get into our offseason content, which we'll cover both these teams in our offseason content as well. But for Dalton Wassman, I'm Max Chadwick, and that'll do it for our preview of the 3 bowl games between ranked teams. Hey, thanks for watching another episode of the PFF College Football Show. Please make sure you guys subscribe to the channel.
Also, subscribe to PFF Plus at subscribe.pff.com for all of the same data and grades that we use in our show, plus fantasy tools, betting tools, and our mock draft simulator.